Welcome you all here today, and part of our mission, in addition to generating our own policy work, is to provide access and serve as a resource for a diverse range of thoughtful perspectives on Connecticut government and Connecticut policy. We have Chris Powell as our presenter kicking that off. Chris is, as many of you know, one of the most astute and independent-minded commentators on our state government, and he's been managing editor of the Journal-Inquirer. Journal-Inquirer is the only Connecticut daily newspaper founded in the last 100 years to have survived, and I think that's a testament to Chris's stewardship and leadership.
High school graduate, that's me. But a high school graduate from long ago, back when diplomas meant a little something anyway, the State Higher Education Department reported that nearly 70% of the freshmen had to take remedial English or math or both. But how has state government responded to this problem? Last year, the General Assembly and the governor enacted a law forbidding the colleges from giving remedial courses and requiring professors to build remedial help into their regular classes. This seems likely to have two results: to drag down classes for students who can perform at grade level, and perhaps most important, make sure that there never will be another embarrassing report quantifying the need for remediation in those colleges. Nothing is to be done about social promotion, and so Connecticut now pays for 16 years of education without getting the results 12 years used to produce. City schools began to spend more per pupil than suburban and rural schools, and after a vast increase in spending, city school performance hardly changed at all. So then the poor performance of city schools was blamed on a lack of racial integration. That was the premise of the decision of the state Supreme Court in the case of Shutt versus O'Neill in 1996. The decision proclaimed the constitutional right of every student in Connecticut to a racially integrated education. So state government lately has been spending billions of dollars in what are called magnet schools in the name of facilitating racial integration. In fact, these magnet schools have facilitated only the continuing flight of middle-class students from underclass students. Educational success correlates not with school financing and not with integration, but almost entirely with parenting. With about 40% of children in Connecticut living in single-parent households, a figure rising to 90% of children in Connecticut cities. The problem here is social disintegration, and it is worsening in Connecticut, largely because of state government's mistaken premise that subsidizing people and having children outside marriage is cheaper than group homes and orphanages. The cost of these maladies is beyond calculation, from education to medical care to criminal justice and prisons, and generally unhappy lives. A little anecdote I'd like to tell. About 3 years ago, I noticed on the evening news on Channel 3 a report about a woman in Vernon who had been arrested on charges of risk of injury, and she was complaining to the Channel 3 reporter how she walked around Rockville for many hours, and the search came to the attention of neighbors who called the police, and the police came and talked to her and found that the kid had been missing for something like 5 or 6 hours. I was watching this on TV and I was wondering, how the hell does somebody get in such circumstances? And I assigned one of our reporters to find the woman and interview her. How does somebody come to such circumstances? And I reported that, well, the woman was plainly mentally ill, that she didn't just have the 3 kids that the police had taken away in the recent incident. She had 2 kids older than that who had already been taken away by DCF for some other reasons, and explained that she had the kids by 3 different drug dealers who are now in prison. This is a life. Those involved in public policy have to ask, what makes this possible? Well, I think they have a pretty good idea what makes it possible. I mean, you can live like this. Government is underwriting this lifestyle, not just with your basic welfare stipends or Section 8 housing vouchers and WIC benefits and Medicaid and on and on. We are not holding people to account for the antisocial behavior, the antisocial lives they are living that have been made possible only with government subsidy. We are destroying the fabric of society by subsidizing this kind of conduct. The detective played by the late Jerry Orbach said sardonically, "How about if I just take him to Rikers now?" The war on drugs produces nothing but a huge prison population and an ever-hobbled minority population. This is just, I think, a stimulus program for police and prosecutors and social workers and parole officers and prison guards. I wish we could audit this policy. What do we mean to accomplish by it? Transportation. The state government is madly building or planning new stuff like the busway from Hartford to New Britain and high-speed rail service from New Haven to Springfield, while the basic stuff crumbles. Road and bridge maintenance and the low-speed rail service for the main commuter rail system in the country, Metro North from New Haven to New York, it's all being neglected. Economic growth. Connecticut's policy for economic growth is now entirely a matter of corporate welfare, bestowed entirely as political patronage. Much of it is simply relocating assets within the state. It's grossly unfair to those who don't get the patronage. It's not hard to imagine correcting these policies, but it's unlikely that anything can be done until state government permits itself to regain control of its finances. That is, regaining control of public finance requires Connecticut to break out of the straitjacket of its public employee labor relations laws, particularly collective bargaining and binding arbitration. These laws reduce the public interest to something less than equality with the special interest. This drives taxes up while cannibalizing public services. Community college budget. It's going up 5%, but they have to cut services because all the money's going into increases in staff compensation. The increases in staff compensation in government throughout the state are outrunning the increase in tax revenue available to pay for them. You find that the problem is that too much is going into increases in staff compensation. As a result, the actual services to the public have to be cannibalized. The Quinnipiac poll reported that 75% of state residents say the state's economy is not good, and 58% are unhappy with the state's direction. The implication is that there is a strong majority that might be talked to and persuaded about different directions in policy. The budget threatens to leave the next state administration a funding gap even larger than the funding gap that Governor Rell left to Governor Malloy. That suggests either another record tax increase to underwrite policies that keep pushing the state down, or repudiation of those policies and reversal of the state's direction. Of course, I hope it's the latter. I met Tom Foley for the first time 3 years ago at Channel 3, the Face of the State show, and got to ask him some questions, and I asked him about binding arbitration, and I was shocked to get a very straight and candid answer from him that he was against it. He thought it was a bad idea. Really encouraged to go on living that somebody could say this in politics in Connecticut. I was not so encouraged when in the last days of the campaign, Tom remarked that state employees didn't have anything to fear from him. Can't imagine a better issue than the corporate welfare issue to do that. What makes a good newspaper man? The answer is easy. He knows everything. He is aware not only of what goes on in the world today, but his brain is a repository of the accumulated wisdom of the ages. He is not only handsome, but he has the physical strength that enables him to perform great feats of energy. He can go for nights on end without sleep. He dresses well and talks with charm. Men admire him, women adore him. Tycoons and statesmen are willing to share their secrets with him. He hates lies and meanness and sham, but keeps his temper. He is loyal to his paper and to what he looks upon as his profession. Thank you for sitting through this today.
Thank you. I thought your point about transportation and how we invest in new things but don't maintain old things or existing useful things was fascinating. It always seemed to me that construction projects, breaking ground and building new things is kind of the mother's milk of politics. What's going on?
Every governor recently has had the urge to move downtown Hartford around. They want monuments to themselves, and there's just no glory in keeping things working well. And so the busway, I mean, who even knew that we had that need in Connecticut?
What would your advice be to a gubernatorial candidate or a state-level candidate as how to explain to Connecticut voters why what works locally will work in the state?
Much of the literate population is on the government payroll. And can a majority, political majority, be forged among people who believe in a basically private economy. I don't know that's the case here. That's a hell of a challenge. How can you build a political majority among people who are not on the payroll one way or the other? You have a good point. I mean, there's a huge proportion of the population now is dependent on either government salaries or transfer payments. Can you maintain a private competitive economy in circumstances where the government class consists of such a huge percentage of the population? I would like, before I go, for there not to be stories like that anymore, for sick people and their families to have confidence that they will not suffer financial catastrophe. Now, certainly, a system to provide for people like that, catastrophic medical insurance. You've got to remember that the general principle behind the current law was articulated by the Heritage Foundation as the conservative alternative to Hillary Care back in 1993 or so. That is, everybody being required to get insurance and the government buying insurance for those who could not afford it, whose incomes were legitimately below a certain threshold, with the insurance purchase being financed out of the progressive income tax system. Interested in replacing, as the Republicans always said they want to do, but they haven't come up with a program yet. And if that's what's on offer, that's what I'll take in the hope that it will be amended and improved and made more rational.